Hello and welcome to The Future of Business, the podcast where each week we discuss current business issues that will have a significant impact on the future of business in Ireland and beyond, and explore their possible consequences for people in business itself and in society more generally. I'm Vincent Wall, and today I'm joined by Alex Burnham, Director with Mazars in Ireland, and Michael Conway, Director of Renaissance Contingency Services, to discuss the growing challenge and threat to Irish business of cybercrime. Alex, if I could start with you, just how big is that threat to businesses large and small?
Yes, Vincent. I guess the key area is cybercrime is a threat to organisations of all sizes across Ireland and globally. I suppose cybercrime as a threat, and the threat of a cyber attack to an organisation, it's not a new concept. Cybercrime has been around for many a year. Decades ago, we were protecting our devices with antivirus software, anti-malware software, etc. But I think over the past 3 years, we've seen a huge increase on the level of cyber attacks, especially to organisations within Ireland. The magnitude and sophistication of such attacks is significantly changing, and changing on a daily basis. Before, we used to look at cybercrime and we'd have this vision of a disgruntled student sat in his bedroom hacking away at an organisation. Well, this has totally changed. The vision now, it's big business. All the gangs are into cybercrime and investing millions of euros into this type of organisation. In terms of statistics, globally, cybercrime is estimated to cost around 350 billion euros each year.
What does that come down to, say, in real terms for the average Irish firm, that potential cost?
What we're seeing from the investigations that we've conducted with some of our clients, we're seeing the cost of an average cyber attack can range anywhere from 100,000 euros up to 250,000 and beyond. And that's really not paying the ransoms. That's just taking care of the loss of revenue. That's looking at the investigation, hosting the investigation, getting specialist resources in to manage the incidents, conducting forensic investigations to identify the magnitude and the impact of such a cyber attack.
Michael, your company, Renaissance, brings in and distributes on to companies that help protect against cybercrime, the various technical protections that are out there. But what are the principal types of cyber threat to Irish businesses now? And are small businesses any more protected than large?
Yeah, and I think just following up on what Alex was mentioning there, I mean, it's for everybody. So a cyber incident and threat can happen to absolutely anybody. It can happen to your largest multinational, your government department, to the small organisation or man on the street. But the impacts can be absolutely dramatic. So if you take a large organisation, it might be significant impact. It might be a very, very big number. And as Alex said, this is big business. This is big business. These guys are all about taking money out of your organisations. Not just the cost to you, but actually taking money and taking value out of your organisation. But in the small organisation, it might even be the end. And so ultimately, any organisation, any person, anybody is susceptible to cybercrime. We've all had those sort of challenges and issues, and we're all familiar anecdotally to customers, clients, family members and people like that who have been impacted.
In specific practical terms, what are the types of cybercrime that the average Irish firm experiences? Say somebody employing 50 to 250 people.
A ransomware attack is a typical type of attack that occurs quite regularly.
Which is what?
So a ransomware attack is when somebody inadvertently clicks typically on something, a URL or some link in an email they weren't even expecting, or even if they were expecting it and it looks like an email that's legitimate. If they click on that brings them to a bad site. Now, in simple terms, their systems are now infected. It actually now hijacks your data. It hijacks your systems and it encrypts your data. So the first thing that you might actually, as a user, notice is a big message, big red message in the front of your screen saying your data is now being encrypted. So what you have to do, it gives you the option to pay some money to get that data back. You have a choice. Now, if you have followed all your procedures and your protocols and everything else, and you have your backups and everything in place, you can take the appropriate action to restore back from your backups. But any data that's not covered within that, and the reality is people's backups aren't as effective as they should be. We've had instances when people have contacted us and said, ultimately their business has been hijacked and they desperately want to pay this ransom, and they need to pay this ransom ransom to get their data back. Without that, they have no business.
Michael, if I can just interject slightly, just the experience that we've had in Mazars recently in terms of the type of exploitation that clients have been exposed to, we see an increased number of attacks on web-based mail, whether it be from weak passwords, whether it be continuously using the same password. And as a result, the amount of exposure and data breach that has happened as a result of access to emailed mailboxes. If we put that in context, if I ask one of you when you get back, is to just have a look at your inbox and have a look at the type of emails that you have, the number of emails. The average mailbox has probably got about 5,000 emails from all your clients, your customers, all different personal details. So you get into GDPR, you get into data breaches. Do you have to inform your clients of, that your emails have been exposed? As a knock-on of that, what we also see is they develop a profile, so they gain access to your mailbox, and then they start profiling you. And as a result, what you may see is a CEO-type fraud attack, is where they're looking at the types of emails that you're sending. They're building up your routine. They understand who you're communicating with, how you process, how you invoice different clients, how you transfer money, building up that profile. And then when they're satisfied, they may then set the trigger and send that email and ask for money to be transferred to other accounts, in a fraudulent manner.
So, Michael, these guys, whoever they are, let's just call them guys, you may think you're free from threat at the moment, but they actually can be lurking in your system, waiting for the right time to pounce.
People out there who have been infected and attacked, there are people who haven't been, and there are people who are, but don't know about it. Building on what Alex is saying there, the statistics internationally, and they're varying in statistics, but basically, organisations, the bad guys typically can sit in your systems for between 100 and 200 days before they activate. So what they're doing is they're profiling, as Alex says, they're profiling what you're doing, profiling everything to do with the organisation. And one of the points that Alex made is around passwords. Access to systems is critical for these guys. So what they do is they sit along, they look at the activity, they hijack passwords. If your password for administrator is admin and password 1, well, then you
are more vulnerable.
Well, you almost deserve what you're getting. You have been advised that there's lots of multi-factor authentication capabilities out there, so use them.
I think we also see, going on to that, onto the password issue, we also see phishing attacks.
That's with a PH.
That is with a PH, is where the cyber criminals will use different technique to try and coerce your password out of you, whether it be a pop-up message that looks like a prompt to change your password. Their primary thing is to get the passwords and sell them on, or may use it further to profile you and launch another attack.
Hopefully we've sufficiently scared business listeners who are tuning in to take the right precautions. But what is the first piece of advice that you would give, Alex, to a company that realises it needs to up its guard?
I think the first area is to understand your environment. Is to take a step back and have a look at your IT environment. Look at who you share data with. Look how you communicate with different organisations. Look at what different devices you use and different protocols you use, and then do that risk assessment and identify the key risks to an organisation. In terms of risks, what we're seeing currently is, cybersecurity sits within the top 5 risks to organisations. Some organisations have it around 2 or 3, and you need the backing from the board downwards. The days of cybersecurity being IT's responsibility have totally gone. It's a full organisation's responsibility to take care and to understand the threats that your organisation is exposed to.
And in your view, do many organisations perhaps need outside help to actually make that full assessment, that they may not be aware of even things to look for in terms of risk?
Absolutely. This is one of the key challenges that organisations, mainly from the small to medium size, they don't have that expertise internally. So they need to go out and look to organisations, specialist organisations that can come in and do an audit or do a risk assessment and give advice in terms of how to protect their
Yeah, and I mean, the small and medium organisations, they're really, really good at the industry they're involved in, whether it's distribution, manufacturing, professional services, whatever it is. That's their business. And typically, the senior managers, that they know it inside out. But the whole area of cyber is a little bit scary to a lot of people because it's not their specialist area. So, no more than if you have an illness, you need to go to a doctor. If you have a challenge with a motor car, you go to a garage to get somebody to look at it. You typically do need some specialist skills, but building on phishing and behaviour, one of the first things that people can also do is look at individuals within their organisation. People can be a weak link. Frequently, people are saying, "Listen, I'm trying to do the very best for a company." They get an email in and it says, "Here's an invoice that needs to be paid," and they go, "I better click on this to look at it." Maybe you should step back and say, "Well, actually, we're not expecting this. We don't know who it's from." My experience personally is a bill will always come a second time if you need it.
So train your people, a key message.
But be aware.
Also, I suppose there's a whole range of technical protections you can buy out there.
We're a distributor. We bring technologies into the marketplace. We look globally at what technologies are appropriate in the Irish marketplace. We bring them in, but we bring them in through the IT channel, your local reseller, the people who are your professional people who look after your service, etc. Building on what Alex is saying and knowing your business, these people are probably helpful as well because they actually understand. They've worked with you for a long period of time. So if you work with these partners, they have an understanding of how you're structured. They have an understanding of the types of technologies that are relevant for you and can work best for you. And then they can look to map those technologies, sensible technologies, not ridiculous technologies, but also it's not necessarily about spending big sums of money. It's about spending the right sums of money in a wise way.
I think just to add to that, Michael, another challenge for organisations from the small to medium is that they don't have those resources, so they outsource the support of their technical infrastructure to a third party. And one of the areas we would always ask our clients is, how do you gain assurance over the standard and the protection that your environment gets from your third parties? And that's a very difficult thing to do. One of the areas we'd look at is that you get consistent reports. You get monthly reports, dashboards that prove that patch management, antivirus, your firewalls are configured correctly on a continuous basis. And somebody internally has the skills to review those, understand them, and also go back to your third parties and challenge them where there's any discrepancies. I suppose other key areas are around changes to your environment. Are you invoking another vulnerability when you're making a change to your network environment? You need to be able to challenge that. An organisation needs to be able to challenge that. And I suppose that's where you'd look at a security mentor as well as a third party to support you. We hear concepts of, virtual information technology security officers where you have that resource to draw down on and challenge your third parties.
We've talked about the threats, the range of threats. We've talked about the various mitigation measures that companies of all sizes can take, from the technical to human training. Is there a protocol then as to how a business should act if and when it does suffer an attack?
And again, I think this is one of the key challenges. The skills aren't predominantly in an organisation. And to be fair, some of the third-party support companies don't have those adequate skills to deal with a large, significant outbreak or attack. So really, the first thing you should do before is to have that incident response plan. Develop that plan. Identify who is going to help you in the event that you get exposed. Because really, the way we're looking at the environment, it's not if you get exposed, it's when.
But if you're pretty sure or suspect that private or personal data has been breached, yeah, I presume you automatically inform the Data Protection Commissioner's Office. Absolutely.
And this is where the cost of the investigation starts to ramp up. You would make the initial declaration to the Data Protection Commissioner, but then you'd be required to do some forensic investigation and sort of analyse the level of exposure and the type of clients and the clients that you've that have been exposed. You're also obliged to contact the An Garda Síochána. After all, this is a crime, and should be considered as a crime. And I suppose if we look at fighting cybercrime, because it's such an international crime, if at an international level we're not consolidating instances, and we're not investigating at a global level, and we're not reporting, each country isn't reporting attacks, then we're really fighting a losing game.
Which isn't good, because apart from the requirement to do so, I presume it also helps build up a profile for the authorities, whether it's the Guards or the Data Protection Commission, Michael, to try and offer greater protection.
Yeah, and ultimately, let's just step back a little bit. The bad guys are consummate professionals. They pick their time to make their attack. They know what they're going to do, so they are in the driving seat. But the challenge for anybody is to have the specialist skills out there to help and respond to them. So you're fighting against experts, so you therefore will typically need experts in your corner to fight back. But consolidating that information, profiling that information, I think is absolutely huge in terms of the international fight against cybercrime. But it is real, and it is big, and it is international, it's global. Typically, a lot of these attacks are happening from outside of Europe. They can be anywhere in the world.
In terms of actually trying to mitigate the cost of an attack, and we've heard the average cost there of €100,000, possible litigation maybe arising out of it, is it absolutely vital that a business basically shows and proves that it has taken all possible measures in advance to protect itself and its stakeholders?
Yeah, because ultimately when you look at the stakeholders, the key part, because when you look at everything here, what we're talking about doing is minimising damage, and it might even be reputational damage. It might even destroy the organisation. So what you've got to do is you've got to put in place your preparations. You've got to actually step back and say, listen, what we're going to try to do is minimise the chance of something occurring. Then we're going to put in place something that's going to identify that if something occurs, that you are in control of it. You actually know about it as quickly as possible. And when you know about it as quickly as possible, you're in a position then to respond. And it's how you respond is the most effective part. If you fail at that part, you're not getting through the gate. It's not necessarily your skills. It might be the skills that you bring on board. It might be the skills, professional skills. It might be technical skills. It could be a whole range of skills. But bring them on board, bring in the authorities that are required, and be open and honest about it.
And can you take in any sort of insurance in advance?
You can. There are cyber insurances, and there's a whole range of cyber insurances now coming along in the marketplace, but no more than motor insurance. Nothing protects you from everything, and if you haven't taken appropriate levels of protections, etc., it's like if you have an accident and if you've had ball tyres in your car, you will not have minimised the chances of an accident occurring. So you have to show that you've put in place appropriate measures, you put in place appropriate controls, processes, etc., and you have the relevant advices available.
I think when you talk about appropriate controls, one of the main areas that we would see as an appropriate control is the actual testing of your network. Technical testing, security testing, penetration testing, vulnerability testing. Exposing your environments to similar attacks as your hackers,
as you might reasonably expect.
Yeah, as your cyber criminals was just so an organisation gains an element of assurance over the security of their environments, and that's something that we would do for our clients on a regular basis, and we recommend that has to be done on a periodic basis, or whenever you make any significant change to your environment that may alter your security posture.
It's frightening that you have to say, Vincent, as we might reasonably expect, it's a sad indictment of where we are, but it's the reality.
Finally, Michael, I assume because the nature of the criminals who are engaging in this activity, their sophistication, they're changing their points of attack all the time. I assume that, just because a company believes its systems are as up to date as possible, that's not sufficient. You need to constantly be on the alert, constantly updating your systems, constantly training your staff.
Yeah, it's a never-ending battle. And an analogy that I quite like using sometimes, it's a bit like going past a number of houses on the street. If you see a door locked, well, that gives you some indication. If you see CCTV cameras, gives you some level of indication that there's some level of protection in place. So maybe the bad guys go next door. If the gate's locked, if there's the guard dog, etc. So it's layers of security. They're consistently updated, they're appropriate, they're relevant, the proper types of security, they're in place, they're monitored. You actually know what's actually going on. That's really important, because the bad guys are going to find a target, and what you've got to make sure at one level is that you're not the target. But if you are the target, that you have the capability of responding and coming back out.
Alex Burnham of Mazars and Michael Conway of Renaissance Contingency Services. Thanks indeed. We'll leave it there. The key points that I took from our conversation, and it is a relatively concerning conversation, is that all businesses, large and small, will suffer an attack, will suffer an attack of some form that could actually be life-threatening to the company. So it's critical that you get the proper advice on all the training systems that you have for your staff, because they can be a weak link unwillingly. Obviously, to get the right and appropriate level of technical defence against attacks, to have the protocol in place as to who to go to immediately, who to inform, including the relevant authorities, the guards, the Data Protection Commissioner, when you actually suffer an attack, and to remain ever vigilant at the highest level of the company, because these forms of attacks are going to come. Until our next podcast, bye-bye. Thank you for listening to The Future of Business with Vincent Wall and Mazars. We welcome any feedback to our podcasts, and particularly your suggestions as to topics we should cover. You can comment and rate us wherever you find this podcast or on mazars.ie. Bye for now.